We are at the Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota for a Regis dialogue with the film director Ang Lee. Let's start the dialogue. You made this film, Brokeback Mountain. This is your second truly hot man-on-man action movie since Wedding Banquet. And I just want to pretend I'm Wolf Blitzer, who we're missing right now, and ask you, do you think America is ready for Brokeback Mountain?
I think so. Not 100%, of course. Nothing's 100%. But to my surprise, the way people react to the film is so positive. I think after all, this is a love story. You know, if people really have problem with gay sex scenes, they get over the hump.
So to speak.
Yeah. They're like, oh, okay. If they don't, they won't come and talk to me. They talk on television or something. Right. They don't talk to me. As far as I could tell, I think love is something really universal. And this is the new tools, new steps to get into that universal place. Although it's a very unique texture. But the subtext is about love, of struggling to have a taste of what is that love about, what is the illusion of love. I think people guess that. The movie seemed to sink in for me, I think, to the audience, for what I could tell. So it did go much broader than I expected. I think we talk about, no, we're doing this for a small art house and selected theaters probably. And you told me, like, after a few days of daily, you say, oh, we're fine, no pressure. We don't have any problem. We don't have to make a lot of money to make the money back. I always assumed that the movie would play in a very limited distribution. I never told you probably, but that's what's in my head. But just see how it works. It's interesting still to see when it grows wider what will happen. But I'm moved. I have to say that I feel wrong to categorize as certain part of American being redder. I mean, life is not that simple. And people do care about love, and there are people who won't come to see the movie. If they do, I hope they change their mind or have opinion. But come and check it out and see how you feel. I think it's important to be honest and to check into the deep inside of ourselves and to each other's. It's a human condition. Life is complicated. And it's not simple that you can categorize them. Yeah. You know, it's all mixed up. You know, we mix up cowboys and gay love and see what happens.
It's basically a blender drink. So many of us who've participated in helping make your movies and who have been watching them and critiquing them have noticed the evolution of many different kinds of style that's appropriate to each story. We've also noticed a real care and attention to framing and to the visual aspects. You're really becoming very well known as a visual storyteller, and clearly when you have people who just mumble a few lines in the feature film, you better be telling the story visually because there's not that much else to follow. You grew up in a household that was pretty academic. Your father was a high school principal.
He would like to think we're academic. We're not. Well, he's a high school.
The household, I didn't say you were. But how did you...
He was my high school principal, and it was one of the best high school in Taiwan.
Yeah.
So that's where I get all the repression and stuff.
But what about the visual side? In terms of a visual education, what were your first memories of things that really, where you noticed the frame and where you noticed the image and it really affected you?
Oh, you never asked me that before.
I know. I'm trying to come up with new stuff here.
Some movies, early on, I don't know why I remember the Ghost Story, Japanese Ghost Story. It's a trailer. And I won't dare to go by myself to the bathroom at night until I was like 13 or something. So that's one of the earliest I could remember. Actually, the earliest image I remember, I put that in one scene. I probably never told you that. Oh. In Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when Yusho and Limu Bai, under the moonlight, they talk about the girl. That's kind of the first image in my life.
So I was sick. Michelle Yeoh and Chow Yun-fat.
Yeah. I was sick. I had a very high temperature. My mother brought me to my father. I was like, I must be a baby, like 1 or 2 years old, like 1.5. I remember under a certain light, and she asked my father, what am I going to do? She's freaking out. And I just remember that scene, and I put it in the same moonlight, same kind of courtyard. Since you asked me, I don't know why.
You have a memory from when you were a year and a half.
They say I was that sick when I was a year and a half. I don't know why. No.
Wow.
But I grew up with movies. I think I was never really a writer. In my earlier years, I had to write because nobody gave me scripts. I had to write, I think. That's why I start with family drama. That's all I know. And then after 2 movies, people give me a script. I'm happy to snatch their ideas, including yours. And the first time I remember, I was actually a theatrical type of filmmaker. I was shooting actors. That's pretty much what I did for the first movie. And I try to get away from that a little bit. Making low-budget films in New York, with you guys, you have to shoot very quickly. You're lucky if you can finish shooting the film. There are few shots you insist on having them fancy, good-looking, but basically you shoot actors, which fits my background really well. I had 5 years of theatrical training before I decided to be a filmmaker. Then I got a little tired of that. I did Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. I got more time. I was making that movie in Taiwan to think about visually how I want to make it more interesting. Still, they're about actors talking, shooting faces. And I really got into what you're talking about, the framing, consciously. That I was conscious about myself being a Chinese filmmaker. I use negative space and framing, and how the picture reflect the inner pictures of actors without saying it, was starting from, actually, ironically, a sensibility, which the first time I wasn't directing a Chinese film. And it's the first time I deal with the movie purely. There was oratory skills. It's a verbal culture. I did that because I was so scared of the actors. I want to stay away from them. Remember how you social with them because I couldn't talk? I was like too shy. You say I'm a Zen master. I don't say a thing, but I'm everywhere. You're kind of my entourage. You kind of deal with them for me.
Yeah, but it was a complete shtick. I mean, it enabled you to terrorize them.
But then I thought about, well, I'm Chinese. I got to do the sensory through framings, where to put them.
Well,
so that's when I was consciously aware of.
Yeah, but
I was doing.
I think there's a lot of things feeding into that. I mean, I'll never forget the difference between Eat, Drink, Man, Woman and then Sense and Sensibility, which followed, and the relationship with the actors. I remember going to Taipei for the first day of shooting on Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and at lunch, you line up, you get a kind of styrofoam container with lunch, and we sat down at the picnic table outside the house. This is where the father is the chef, his house. And we were sitting there chatting, and we realized that nobody else was sitting at this long picnic table with us. Do you remember this? And you kind of, because you've been living in New York, you've made 2 films with us in New York. This is your first film in China with Chinese actor and crew. And finally, you just kind of looked around, and then you put your head in your hands and goes, oh, I forgot to invite the crew to sit with me. And I mean, if I recall, that you are always referred to on set as Mr. Director.
Yeah, nobody called my name.
Yeah. So then he goes to England, where the actors are all trained at the Royal Academy, and they all, for every line, they have basically a master's thesis to talk to you about. In China, it's like, do this. Cool, thanks. So you were a little intimidated yourself. So I think you used the
it forced me to think about movie
thing,
in a nonverbal way.
Yeah.
I think as a filmmaker, all filmmakers, talented filmmakers, it's very important you tell a story visually. That's just the thing.
Yeah.
No. Otherwise, you'd be doing theater or be a writer or something. If you're a filmmaker, I remember in film school, first year, they eliminated half the students. And you can tell whether a person's a filmmaker or not from his very first short film that we exercise, a silent little black and white thing, exercise. Can someone tell a story with pictures? I think we were born with that. Yeah. I'm just more aware of that, more willing to shy away from actors and have them do less and the picture do more, and eventually have the audience do more work. I think that's a good way to inviting it, and I naturally fall into that because I think being Chinese filmmaker, that's my backbone. Not only because I shy from the words, but I think I grew up visually with dealing with negative space. We deal with more on the space than mass. Right. I think that's just my culture. And indirectness is pretty much in my blood because we're repressed. We're not supposed to say what we want to say. So we always find ways, metaphors, however, picture-wise, to hide the story. I think I came with that. So that situation, it's kind of a wake-up call for me as a Chinese filmmaker.
But you were trained.
It's funny, yeah. I mean, it's my first English film, but it makes me aware of that's where I come from, and that's where I'm going to. And then the movie was doing well, it was successful, then I was more daring to go into that route as a filmmaker, as a cinema person, since the Ice Storm on.
No, it's true. I remember on the set of Sense and Sensibility, you turned to me.
I was more confident to tell, yeah.
Yeah. No, you turned to me one day and you said, ugh, on Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, I was the emperor, and now I'm just the president. So you fled to the visual at that point. But some of your cues for the visual language of
I think a lot of
the
filmmakers, they're pretty awkward talkers. Yeah. I witnessed a lot.
Yeah.
You know, they had to. It's the only way they connect to people, and they're best at that. Yeah. I'm probably one of those. And of course, over the years, I do publicities, I get better. You know, in talking.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
10 years ago, I wouldn't be police officer.
That's true. But you were trained as an actor.
Yeah, I wanted to be an actor in Taiwan. That's 3 years of education. I was on stage, be a leading man. No. And then I came to States for further study. Okay. Yeah. And I was in Champaign, Illinois, and I didn't really speak English, so can't get into the actors program. I was in one mime show, and then and I was doing the lighting and all that stuff, stage work, put on the stage and stuff. And I had to be a director. I got depressed, and the young mind works. I didn't want to be a theater director. I think the best people go on stage and be actors. It's actor and audience. Nobody cares about stage director. They're failed actors. That's how my mind worked. And I thought if I want to be a director, I want to be a movie director. I didn't want to be a stage director, so I applied film school. But for a long time, I thought I was a stage person. Right. That's why I feel very close with actors.
Right. Going back to your first couple of films, you've been writing screenplays. You got out of NYU and spent how many years before you made your first feature?
6 years.
6 years. Wow.
I was writing script and cooking, taking care of baby. I was afraid if I go take a job and then I'll miss some chance or something. So I didn't really have a job.
That's as good an excuse for unemployment as I can come up with. I can't have a job because I'm waiting for the phone to ring to get me a job.
Yeah, until I entered this Taiwanese government script competition. I wrote a script. I had that idea. It's pushing hands, and I didn't want to make it. So that's why I wrote it. I thought the government might like it, and I got the first place. And they wanted to make the movie. I said I have to think about it for a couple of days. Then life goes nowhere. It's been 6, 7 years I haven't made a movie since student days. So I took the job. That was pushing hands. Some of you might have seen it here. That's how I met James. I got a little bit of money, Taiwanese government money. I don't know if I can make a movie out of that money. Then some people introduced me and James and his partner Ted Hope, a good machine. And we made the movie. And then after that, we get the chance to make The Wedding Banquet, which is an international art house hit. That's how we started.
So you now have the opportunity to ask some questions. Oh, right there.
What do you dream about? I mean, are there things that come from your dreams that recur that go into the way that you visualize?
I'm dreaming about making movies. And all this movie I made is kind of my dreams. In some ways I feel I was just loosely connected to this world. I'm a very spaced out person. But I could really focus in making the movie. So I'm kind of creating home for myself, and I feel I'm more grounded in behind that screen than to the world I'm dealing with. So I guess in a way it's dream, but the dream is so vivid to me that they become my ultimate reality. And emotionally and thoughtfully, they seems to be more strong for me, and they make sense to me. The real world doesn't really make sense, just too big for me to understand. There's so much complexions to comprehend. But in movie world, they're like a dream. But it's not like your dream is irrational, but it's your rationality. But it feels like a dream. So all those movies, the only one movie that gave me the nightmare was the Hulk.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Only movie. There are some images they come back and haunt me and give me nightmares. The fight with his father, the last section, particularly fight with the Rock. I don't know why the Rock, and a couple of times when they're under the water. Yeah. I was terrified. It never happened to me. Usually when I did those pictures, and I was very much at ease and sleep very well, better than in between movies. But those got back to me. I think maybe they're too violent. Maybe they get into my psyche, to my childhood terror, or I don't know what. They did get to me as nightmares. But other than that, I love those movies I made. I cannot look at them as storytelling. It's just flashbacks of images in my head. And my job is to put them together, so it's comprehensible. But what motivated me to do those movies, sometimes they're images, like one little thing, and I decide to take the whole project. For Crouching Tiger, it was a thick, pulpy fiction. It's the last paragraph when she flies down. There's one image that hit me, and I wanted to make the movie. With the Ice Storm, it was the image when the kid, played by Elijah Wood, sliced when he gets electrocuted. Like right before that, there's a shot in my head. He sliced down the road in that transparent, clean world. I remember exactly, that was like page 200, exactly 200, and I said, that's the movie I want to make. So there are some images that hit me want to make the movie. With Brokeback, there's no specific. It's just when he take out the shirts, I was moved. I want to make the movie. But it could be from anywhere. And they're somewhat all my dreams. There are parts of the movie that's my job, because I can string the dreams together. And there are shots, is something I want to do. And usually the shots and the idea and certain taste, they come to me first, like a fighting scene for Jackie Chan. Then he think about how to put it together in a story. I gotta fight here, I gotta do this, that, and then he found a way to string them together and make sense. So it's similar things to me. Because a lot of them, they're a dream to me. Flying is one of them, yeah. And green, something green and bamboo. It happened in my dreams.
All right. Question?
Nowadays, when you make movies, I imagine it's very easy to get a lot of people to come around and want to help you very much. But back when you were making Pushing Hands, I imagine the process was very difficult and maybe even scary. Can you talk about how you willed Pushing Hands into existence and how you steeled yourself to make that movie?
I cannot explain. I always work hard, but when things, it's like destiny. When things meant to happen, they just come. And before that, no matter how hard I push them, it just won't happen. 2 years before Pushing Hand, I was involved in, for example, a script called Neon, and I got Dylan McDermott. It was supposed to be a very low-budget film, and Julia Roberts, and before Pretty Woman, and Vince D'Onofrio, and like 2 months before it's happened and the deal fall apart. That's been my stories. So I didn't really know. I'm the worst pitcher, and James can tell you about that. it's very hard for me to verbalize my idea in a very short terms. Not only in English, but Chinese too. Usually when I'm interested in something, because I could not make decisions, and because I'm confused about the material that really interests me, and I need to do something about it, and film is one way I deal with that. So it's been very difficult for me. And Pushing Hand fall on my lap, because I win the script competition, and they have to push me to make the movie. So that's the irony. And up to this day, I don't really know how to push, to turn things around verbally, or just have somebody to trust me before I do it. Now I don't have to do that, thanks to God. I don't have to pitch the movie. But back then I have a pretty convincing student film. I student film at NYU, which is a very good film school. I won the best film, best director of that year. So I got an agent, and he will send to wherever it needs to be sent. I think anybody seeing that short film, which is 43 minutes long, would have doubts that I can make movies. But it's just the way I talk about script that gets stuck. And also, I think the script doesn't really work. That's before I met James. I don't think I know too much about script writing yet in a feature-length scale. I think feature film is not just longer short films. It's a different ballgame. It's a structure, it's character development. I didn't realize that until many years after film school. So it took me a long time to understand about writing, and through which about feature filmmaking. So I struggled that a lot. I think a convincing work like the student film I had, and particularly a good script, is what it takes. I don't know how much pushing and deal making and presentation pitching will help. Somebody throw the money at you when you're new.
Yeah, well, that's true. You came in to describe Pushing Hands, and you really felt like you had to pitch. And pitches, there's a genre to it. It's supposed to last about between 5 and 15 minutes. And if you're from the new Hollywood school, you're supposed to stand up during the pitch, which to me, it's like it's the scariest moment in the world, when the crazed screenwriter starts to stand up in front of you and act it out. But apparently they like that in LA. And I'll never forget, you sat down and you talked about the movie for it was about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. And there was an element of like, because we're not used to that pace. But I'll never forget when you walked out of the office, I turned to Ted and I said, well, yeah, that was pretty much the worst pitch I've ever heard in my life. But you talked about the movie as a filmmaker. You described a movie that you had already, in many ways, you had already made the movie in your head a few times.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
And that was the thing that was the key to us, was listening to that, where you were really talking to somebody who wasn't pitching a story, but somebody who was actually describing a movie. And describing a movie can be fairly tedious, as you know. Like you asked about dreams, and there are certain people I know that it's the last question you ever want to ask them at breakfast. What was your dream last night? It's like, and then the big lizard came out, but it was you. But somehow you made it work. So that was good. Question. Let's go over the other side there.
Hi, I just wanted to say I always enjoy the scenes of food and eating all the time in your movie. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about what food means to you in your film.
You want a theory or what really happened? I spent 6 years cooking at home. My wife goes to work. And sometimes someday I'm preparing to make a movie that make people's mouth water. I've been cooking that since I was cooking at home. And the theory is that I think food and sex were human desires, basic desires. We see so much sex, but we haven't seen enough food. They're intuitive. It's a gold mine. Why don't people use that? And also the Chinese culture, it's just tied with food. People talk about that a lot. And everything Chinese do, kung fu, food, tea, whatever, they relate to their life philosophy, which is very Taoist. So they keep balance and medicine too. So you can fit a lot of Chinese culture into it. So I think it's a gold mine for me. So many opportunities you can fit into the dining table and cooking.
It's also
and
a way
it's
to
so
torture.
intuitive.
It's also a way to torture your crew and your producers, because the hardest thing on earth is food continuity in shooting these scenes. You have the wide shot, the close-ups, you do the fifth take. Everybody's chewing. Some people are chewing and spitting. Some people are chewing and eating. Some people know how to fake chew. Some people don't. And then it's like how much lobster is on the plate. And that's like everybody who's like on IMDb, you know, catching all the continuity problems. It's almost always how high was the bouncing Coke glass. You know, every time they go back to the reverse shot, it's boing, 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 you know.
But as a end result, it's ultimate torture for audience. You know, I save a lot of Chinese restaurants business after Eat, Drink, Man, Woman if they're close to the theater. And in making that movie, I want to make sure nobody eats. They talk. They prepare it and get your appetite all roused, and nobody eats them. They stay thin. So that's a torture.
Yes, I saw the Brokenback Mountain, and I thought indeed it was a very beautiful movie, very moving and very sad too, and first and foremost a love story. I also read that it was an adaptation from a short story by Annie Proulx. And my question is that, was she on the set with you, and did she work with you for the script? And eventually, what was her reaction about the movie?
No, and?
And yes. Well, she was very educational in the beginning of my preparation. I talked to her once in New York, and then I visited Wyoming, and she personally took me around in where she thinks her ideal Brokeback Mountain is. And also we hit the bars, the towns, crossroads, and she showed me pictures. So that was very helpful. And after that, I pretty much seen her at the premiere. She was very hands-off. I think in adapting the short story to a script, Larry McMurtry and Diana Osana did a great job. I'm sure they have arguments and work in progress, struggling, but that happened long before I laid my hands on the material. So I worked with Larry, which is even a bigger figure than Annie Proulx herself, and Diana. There's about 3 rounds of script changing, and I also learned a lot from Larry on the Western. But then I think people understand when you make a movie, it's something else. The whole time I couldn't tell her. All I try to do is do justice to her writing, because it's such a brilliant piece of literature. But I have different media. The movie is photorealistic. They don't have internal writing. In order to do what she did to her reader, which is me, I want to do the same thing to the audience. That was my goal. But in order to do the same thing, you have to make changes. I think at some point she had some notes, pretty strict notes about they should be eating hamburgers instead of chicken steak. There's no Wyoming. Welcome to Wyoming. Should be entering Wyoming. That sort of rigorous notes about details. And after that, she was pretty much good luck. And then finally, so it's been psychologically is a big burden on me for a long time, that whether she would approve what I did or not, because there are things I took liberties. And then she loved the movie unconditionally. It was one of the most beautiful things in my life. I have no such fear for my previous film and obligation to be loyal to the original material, because either they're dead like Jane Austen or Wang Dulu. They're not going to come out from the grave and point at me.
Some people would disagree with you on that.
Or like Rick Moody or a couple of other, they're young writers. I didn't really care what they think. So this is the first time working with literary giant, very much alive. It's really intimidating. There are 2 of them. It's very scary. It's just psychologically, it gets to me. So finally, when she loved it, and want to see it again and again. Seems to like everything, including the changes. She even made comments like, people should do more adaptation from short story because they have rooms to expand. And so that was
she took the blue pill. Suddenly, it's been great.
I framed the note she wrote to us. Thank you, after she see the movie. I framed it. It's so precious to me. It means so much to me.
And it was very well written. We have a gentleman down here who's been...
The world is awash in images and also in words, and Harold Pinter, in his recent Nobel Prize acceptance speech, talked about the difficulty of the artist to construct truth through words. I'm interested in you talking about the responsibility of the filmmaker to construct a kind of truth through images. The short version of my question is there a responsibility for the filmmaker, particularly the commercial mainstream filmmaker, to be political in some way?
I let you answer the second part.
It's a job.
Personally, I think we ought to raise the big question, but not providing answers. I think the answer will be anything that's answerable or talkable from my Chinese philosophy is not the real answer. It's bias. I think it's a simplification. I think that's not what I like to do. What I like to do is mix and match and see what happens. I think movie ought to be provocation. It's not make a statement and you listen or debate with me. That's not what it's about. I think it's a provocation. See what that kind of thought, emotion that provokes. And the audience should go ahead and work on the film, work on themselves and find the answers. Of course they won't, but they've been stimulated. They're alive. They ask questions. Life is too complicated to give answer or give statements. That's why we need art and entertainment. I think we fill that gap. No, I'm not the president of the United States. I don't have to give you an answer or statement. And I raise the questions. That's my attitude.
Questions?
Well, loneliness and intimacy sure seems difficult to put on the screen to me. What kind of challenges did you face doing that? Were there any interesting stories about trying to do that?
Loneliness and I think this goes back to how I frame them. I think they can use some help. The loneliness has a lot to do with macho-ness and also the landscape. And I think the landscape is important, and you use that to reflect how they feel. I think the landscape, because Western is in the bewilderness, it is taking that tradition. You have to frame it so it's grand. On the other hand, it is a private milieu. That's where they make love. It's a hideout. It's a secretive place. So it's both secret and open. So you have to show it visually that it has that kind of possibility. And I'm also in movie, I mix two genres. One is the macho Western. It overlaps with Western. And the culture itself, realistically speaking, was tough and conservative. But on the other hand, it's a gay love story. Usually they don't mix on screen. So I feel like in the frontier and groping my way, walking a tightrope to see how I balance the two. There's another thing that really puzzled me is as I was reading it, including the script, it looks like a short epic story. That also clashed too. I was reading only for 30 pages long. And it's tough, but she has internal writings, which I couldn't do it. And it's a story covered 20 years long. So at the end, you want to feel epic. And that also has to do with landscape and the scale of a number of scenes that you accumulate. But the scene itself is a slice of life. So they're all those things, they sort of clash with each other, which I like. I like the challenge. So I'm dealing with that in addition to loneliness and intimacy. I think loneliness is easy. I think it's easy to show loneliness.
Just have guys sitting around looking at
small with, and space, visual space and time space. If they stretch out their lines, in between two lines, they stretch out, you feel loneliness. You pull in the wind, Yes, I mean, loneliness to me is easy, but intimacy that Ennis refused, I think that's the hard part. For the love story, it's like, how much are you willing to fall? We said falling in love. It's a fall. It's destructive. How much you're willing to kill yourself to put everything aside and to deal with your psychology to be intimate. I think that's a bigger issue. That transcends the gay love story. I think they have a chance to be together, but Ennis wouldn't do it. All they got is Brokeback Mountain, as Jack says. So I think that's when she's dealing with intimacy. I think you have to make that work.
I think there's something else. Intimacy is such an interesting term. It's started to appear more in the culture. And one of the things that I think your films come back to again and again is that part and parcel of the creation of even the internal space to have even an intimate relationship with yourself is that sense of guilt and shame. Something inside you that creates.
You cannot even be honest with yourself,
yeah.
Let alone other people. So those are big issues.
I mean, it's one of those things. We've all known people who are so therapeuticized, and who are so completely have their whole analytic shtick down that they are like, vending machines of feelings. There's no you in there thing. And I think there's that sense of kind of in your movies, as you said, the kind of repression is so necessary because it creates that kind of force that almost opens up the internal space, and hence you have, in a weird way, you have, even though you're coming out of a different tradition that has no kind of Christian theological thing, you do with some of the stuff we took in, for example, Brokeback out of Annie's story, but the finding of the sheep at the morning after, and it's not guilt like, oh God, we have sinned by having gay homosex. It's more of that, wow, I'm falling in love. This is this incredible access to my interiority, to who I am, and it's a completely frightening thing, and it has the kind of shock of it.
It's more clear in the movie than the short story to me, because short story is a mystery. You have to work very hard to get in there, and it has internal writing. For me, in dealing with intimacy, I have two characters. They're to me like the both sides of America, and I understand. One is the tough conservative self-denial part that Heath Ledger played. The other is more the American that we know of, or we like to think American is. That's romantic, more knowingly, more free in spirit, smart and articulate. That's Jake Gyllenhaal played. He is really the romantic lead. And I think they make a very good couple. They counterpoint each other.
And plus, one's blonde and one's brunette. I'm just speaking as a producer.
I think the actors bring in a lot in their performance, really make the movie. I can only do so much visually. I mean, after all, you're watching, human faces. That's what you identify with for 2 hours. Nobody can watch beautiful picture more than like 5 minutes,
unless there's a lot of sheep, and then you can extend it to 10.
But I think the actors bring a lot of life to it too, both intimacy and loneliness.
There are a lot of filmmakers that would probably not have taken the risk with Brokeback, and you in fact have made now 2 films about a gay theme or a gay experience. What is it, do you think, in your background that leads you to make film about the gay experience, and why do you think you're so extremely successful at capturing that gay experience?
I wish I know, so I'll do the third one, be successful. Well, I will have to guess that being an outsider all my life, I can very easy to identify with somebody not in the majority of group, and still you have to live with them. You have to function, and you have to be part of society. I think those characters really was like me all my life. My parents came from China to Taiwan because of the Civil War. Their family were destroyed by the communists. And in Taiwan, we're not native. We think we're pure Chinese, but nobody think we were. So we're being called outsiders, the outer provincial people. We're like the new settler. but it also runs the country. That's the tricky part, and dominated culture for a long time. And then I came to the States and become a foreigner. Then I go back to China. I'm American and Taiwanese. So I was never really deeply rooted in any culture except the Chinese, the dreamy Chinese in my head. And also the movie I make them at home. Personally, I live in New York. That when I see my wife and kids, I feel I'm home. But that's family. That's not a cultural home. And also, I was prohibited to read communist books in Taiwan. It was the most anti-communist place on earth. And I grew up that way. And I came to the States. I started reading communist books. I was 23. And after 23 years, I realized we're the bad guys. So that was a big shock for me. The whole world turned upside down on me. I think it's very easy for me to look at the world from a lower angle, I suppose. Not only with the gay theme in Ride with the Devil, we have one German descendant, the Tobey Maguire play, and a black guy who's fighting for the courts of the South, and Jeffrey Rice. And I can really identify with those people. So I guess that's probably the only reason. And also, I think I'm a male. That homophilia.
Some of us have had that suspicion for a long time.
Well, being gay is it's a big part of us. We didn't really honestly look at it for straight guys. And I think this is something there worth digging into. That when you confront with your fear and doubts, and there's something new that you understand about life and yourself. I think those are very valuable for me. And when I make a gay-related movie, I'm not comfortable both in the straight world and the gay world. So I'm like in that position again. But somehow they have a universal appeal. Not that I calculated at like a marketing person. That's just the way I know how to make movies, how to survive from the filmmaking. Somehow I think they showed. I can only tell you that much, you know.
And you're good at research. We have a production executive who's gay, and while we were in pre-production on the movie, Hank said, I really need just some really specific information here, and I'm just not, where do I get? So we asked him to do a little tutorial, and 2 hours later, he opened the door to his office, and like this, and I said, so how did it go? He goes, that was the most embarrassing 2 hours of my life. So I don't know what you asked, but whatever it was, I go, we had a hand up there.
I like their viewing position. I like to see the straight world is crazy and they're normal. They're normal. I just like that point of view, and yeah, I can very much identify with that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You talked about the Taiwanese trilogy and then moving to Sense and Sensibility, and I've always been really fascinated by that for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you worked very heavily in your own culture, and then you went not only to a completely different culture, but you went two different, like 2-3 centuries later, and you also were dealing with classical literature. And I'm always fascinated by an outsider's perspective on another culture and another time and place. And it's a very special movie to me, and I could not tell you why. It just really resonated with me from the very first time I've seen it. And what was your experience, dealing with going from Taiwanese films going to like old England?
Put the fear factors aside. I think I didn't understand. I just tried to survive. When I read the script first, when they sent to me, I thought they're crazy. All the ethics and bows and introductions. That's first half. And then second half, they start making sense to me. They saw Wedding Banquet and think somehow I should be the one to do Jane Austen. But I feel very at home. I felt like I knew the thing very well at heart. And I realized all my first 3 movies, the Father trilogy, is really about sense and sensibility, the social obligation, fight with your personal free will. Except I couldn't pinpoint that well and put it that well like Jane Austen, sensibility. So I really would soak into that. And also the chance of working with Emma Thompson, I put fear aside and I jump into it. It's a risk for me and for the producers. Everybody's at risk because nobody's seen Asian director do that. And I don't know what's gonna be. Somehow I survive. I know it's doable. It strikes me as movie is really sight and sound. It can be universal, but you have to be diligently. I have to diligently learn about the textures. I spent 6 months before production, just prepare, accumulate my knowledge about handling the literature part and also making movie there. From details to whatever, no, it's a long process. I didn't make those movies overnight by myself. So that was all I know when I make the movies. And over the years, I did it quite a few times, and I realized something. As an outsider, there's a benefit to it, because the first thing you see is the overall shape, because you have a distance. It's clarity, reality, and your source is from reality. I think you want to be authentic. If you have will to do that, you will get there, and actually quicker, because you're less entangled with the texture. And then you see subtext. You see through it much quicker. I got that notion from making The Ice Storm. I found it was quicker than anybody on set who lived through those years,
well,
about what the movie's about.
Everybody on the crew was trying to figure out whether that was the bong they had in high school. Yeah.
So you're less tangled with the reality of the textures. But that is my weakness when I do an English language film or something. I'm being an outsider. But that can be amended. That you just diligently keep at it, keep checking, and you make it into the film world that's believable, that's functional, which is harder than getting authentic. But I found personally the hardest thing is when a movie comes out, it will be different than how people made it before, and what the public is going to say, critics going to say. They called me outsider in the first 2 movies. But I think I was more right, more authentic than how the American movie did. But that's culture. So the cultural convention it's more difficult for me to deal with than historical conventions.
But it's also true, I think on Sense and Sensibility, the thing that struck me so clearly as we were making that transition for you was you take early 19th century Britain, which is a landed patriarchy, and that is being blown up just in the time that Jane Austen is writing into the first major capitalist empire. And you look at what's happened during your childhood and what you were tracking in the first 3 movies with the end of a Confucian patriarchy that often derived from nationalist landed kind of
Taiwan.
And then lands in Taiwan, and they have to transform themselves into uber capitalists, where everything's all of a sudden the patriarchy is over to the side, and suddenly it's what's for sale and how are we going to make it work. And so you're seeing very similar societies being transformed almost in very similarly explosive ways. And so the transition from late 20th century Taiwan to early 19th century Britain was much easier than it would be from late 20th century Britain to early 19th century Britain. Where there's
one foot I was raised, one foot still in that old society, I think. Yeah. But pure English texture, there's no way. I just have to study and get to know them. Yeah. Even get to be good at it, like dry sense of humor.
Yeah, but we hire this...
double negative and all that stuff, you just have to learn and pretend you have that sense of humor and actually pick up some.
Yeah.
I use it afterwards. I feel I was smarter and all that, but I did pick it up.
I have a question. I get the feeling you know each other very well, and I'm wondering, does one of you see a script and tell the other, like James, you tell Aang, this would be perfect for you? Because I get the sense that you have a hunch of what Aang would like, and vice versa.
Well, Aang is...
There's no vice versa. It's a one-way street. Everything goes here.
Well, no, Crouching Tiger. I
don't really know him. He's his whole being is about knowing me, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to work with another writer. It seems like they don't understand. And clearly, I say this. How come they write something else? But he will understand for some reason. Yeah. When we first met, and him and Ted, they share 2 tables. with another company, and Ted looked like a key PA to me. James looked like a professor in a sales, like used car salesman, I would say. I don't know if I want to give my money to them, and I don't know if they're crooks or not. But they say something really moved me. They said, we're king of no budget filmmaking. Listen, it's not low budget, it's no budget. And your money is luxury for us. Our job is, our interest is to teach directors to make the movie they can afford, instead of spend time in development hell, which I spent 6 years in that. And that was moving to me. And then I think James said we were director-centered producers. No, our job is to make the directors work. And I believed them, and they didn't let me down from small movie like that to Big Hulk, to now he's on the other side of the table, he greenlit Brokeback Mountain. They're still helping me make the movie I can afford. In terms of development, usually it comes this way. Even with the Ice Storm, it wasn't his idea to make a movie, but he introduced Rick Moody's book to me. He said, "This is a very interesting young writer in America. Take a look."
I mean, that's
it's
a
fun to
perfect
read.
example. It's like, this is a really good book. It's too scary to even think about making a movie, but you should read it anyhow. Of course, he read it and he called back, "Let's make the movie." I was like, "Fuck." Yeah. That's kind of the
And
process.
also we're collaborating on scripts. The first movie, it didn't work much. A
couple lines.
A little more, yeah. And the second, and it didn't sell really outside of Taiwan. And he said, "Let me help you with the second script." He expand Simon's part and what it relate. Really significant change the first quarter and last quarter. And that was a success. So we keep collaborating. Script is either he come in to do a rewrite or do original, like Ride with the Devil, The Ice Storm, The Hulk. Sometimes he end up also selling those movies. So it's always
Screenwriting is another form of salesmanship, in a sense. I mean, you write a poem. When you're finished writing a poem, you have a poem. When you write a screenplay, you're finished. You have 120 pages, like to go begging people to do stuff and give you money. So, to me, I always think of the writing as a very instrumental process, not as an end in itself. It's really a means to something else. And writing for Aang is a very specific process. It really is. I mean, I love doing Hollywood hack rewrite work because I enjoy it completely. It pays, and it's craft. You know what I mean? It's like engineering. You really have to go in there and fix stuff and make it all work, and you have to be very rigorous. Hollywood scripts have to be very, very tight. And the reason they have to be so rigorous, the reason they have to be so tight, is of course you're writing for studio executives whose greatest fear in the world is the director. And all they need, all they want, is a screenplay that even the worst director in Hollywood can't screw up. That's the job. So it's got to be totally airtight. Whereas writing for Aang, I've got to write something that's really scary and that gets his interest. So it has to have a lot of gaps and fissures and problems. It has to have places that are a little
underwritten.
Yeah, I underwrite a lot. I try.
A lot of scripts out there I read, they don't interest me, even though they're well crafted. Yeah. But they build like battleship, like so solid. It literally feel like battleship to me. So that anybody can do it. I feel that way. But sometimes I feel like old James because I don't really treat him like writer. I treat him like producers. Because once I was accepting script award in Cannes for the Ice Storm, and on stage it hit me. He's a writer. I was accepting for him. Sometimes he'll tell me we have to cut that scene. It's too expensive. So what kind of writer are you? Do I have to protect your own words? So I never really give him credit as a writer.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in today.